bit of luck, I am live and you should be able to hear me. I'm using my head mic for the first time instead of my clip mic. So yeah, okay, so all the comments seem to be open. It is just coming up on 2 o'clock and obviously you can't see me. You've got a picture of my desk. I am here. Hello! Hello. So, for the last week or so, I've been getting a lot of interest in my urban scatter terrain that I have set up in its entirety here for you to have a look at. A lot of interest in how I made it, how I created that concrete look effect, what it's made out of, and how I do the graffiti and such like. So, seeing as there was a lot of interest, I thought it would be a good topic for this week's live stream. Hopefully folks can hear me. Let me just double check that I'm coming in on the right microphone. I wish I could tell. I literally cannot tell. Yep, so please let me know if you can hear me. Anyway, I will assume that it's working, and if it's not, we'll do the same thing that we did last week and end up restarting. So, let me check. This is the terrain that I've been talking about all week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this apart now so that you can see how it comes apart, and then I'm going to show you some pieces of how it was made. So let's get these marines out of the way. And start taking it apart. And the technique I'm going to show you for painting concrete, you don't have to use on the wooden pieces that I'm using. So I've got a building here that I've painted using very much the same techniques, and it serves as a useful storage for all the parts from this terrain set as well. I do love terrain when it's easy to store. That one doesn't want to collaborate. Got a little bit of detail inside the building. There we go. So there we go, put that out of the way and we'll look at some stuff. Okay, so let's talk about materials first of all. So we're talking about lumps of waste wood. So, I mean, my classic go-to has always been, sorry, my brain is a bit slow today, Jenga blocks. Jenga blocks, and I do have some Jenga blocks. Here is a particularly knackered old Jenga block. This piece is actually the remains of one of my old painting sticks. So, you know, you put double-sided sticky tape on a long piece of wood and you stick your miniatures to it and you can spray it. Cheap, simple, much cheaper and simpler than Games Workshop's plasticky one. But this is an old piece of that I sawed up for a different project, and it was sitting in a box. And it's a good example of what I've started with to make the pieces today. So whether you're starting with waste wood, Jenga blocks that a puppy managed to chew, tells you how long I've had this Jenga block, because my dog is 10 and he chewed this when he was like 3 months old. So the first thing you're going to want to do is just to sand it down a little bit. So I've got a nice piece of sandpaper. This is like this is 210. You don't need to use anything with that fine a grain, it's just what I had handy. Mainly the object is to get rid of the obvious grain, and if you've got a splintered piece of wood here, you just want to get rid of the bigger parts of the splintering so that it looks more like concrete and less like wood. And you don't have to be super fastidious about this. It's just about making an effort to clear off any of the really obvious bad bits. Okay, so I'll put that to one side. Now here are some I made earlier because I've been prepping for this session. So here are some pieces that I made earlier. So these have been sanded and prepped, but what I've also done with these, and you can see it really clearly on these because they used to be painted black because they were part of a paint stick, is I've used my Dremel to go around the edges just to give them that kind of chipped, worn look to them. Okay? And you don't have to do that, and if you do use a Dremel, please take care. I am not an expert in woodworking whatsoever. You really should wear safety gloves, wear a mask, wear safety glasses. I don't do any of those things because I'm a fool, but you definitely should, because I don't want to get sued. Right, so when you got these 3 pieces done, I always work in blocks of 3. Is it always blocks of 3? I can't remember. Yeah, I think it's pretty much always blocks of 3 that I work in. There are all sorts of ways you can put it together. So you could, for example, put it together like that, or like that, or like that. And it really doesn't matter what you choose to do, and I've got various different combinations in my collection. The one I use most of all is this one, and you'll see it just works. You can combine them, and I'll show you at the end some of the combinations that you can do really easily with this stuff. Now, my collection is almost entirely glued together with a hot glue gun, but this morning when I was looking around, I can't put my hands on my hot glue gun right now. So I assembled mine with super glue, which worked just fine. And here's the one that I put together. So I wasn't going to keep you hanging around while I did the priming thing. Suffice to say that I primed it black. I could have sprayed. I use this high coat stuff when I'm using spray primer. So I've just primed it with some black. This is grey, but I got black, which actually has just run out. I did a loose overspray with grey, and then I did a very gentle overspray with some white as well. And it's nothing sophisticated. It's not like zenithal highlighting or anything like that. You don't have to worry about the angle or anything. Just a really loose light, because the point is it's supposed to look weathered. It's supposed to look worn. It's not supposed to look neat and tidy. And this is as neat and tidy as this thing is going to get. Now, I did have a bit of a panic at the beginning, just before I came on live, because I realised that I had in fact forgotten to do the bottom. So I have very quickly sprayed on the bottom as well. So you do want to do it all over, because you want it to be able to go like that and to go like that, regardless of what's going on. Okay, so that's sort of by way of a quick introduction. I think most people who are going to be watching this could have worked out how to stick 3 Jenga blocks together, and a bit of weathering is not going to challenge anybody who's got half an ounce of hobby experience. But once you get to this bit, this is the bit where I wouldn't say it becomes tricky. It's not. It's actually phenomenally simple, but it does require just a little bit of judgment. So first we got to think about some pre-weathering. So we're going to think about weathering this these 3 blocks of concrete in a way that is just going to take the edge off, I suppose you could say. It's just going to make them look that a little bit more gritty. Okay, so I'm going to use a tank brush, Army Painter tank brush. I think it's a tank brush. Vehicle terrain, yeah. So Army Painter, and I'm going to do a little bit of dry brushing. Now you'll have noticed that I damped my brush beforehand. It's not the kind of dry brushing that you need to worry about, getting it wrong. Okay, we are not here, and I'm using Citadel White Scar Layer, but just because it's a white paint I want to use up, I don't particularly recommend it. You don't need to worry too much about the neatness of this, or you can see I've got smears down here which you wouldn't normally want on dry brushing, but for this kind of thing it absolutely doesn't matter. If you get like a patch like that has come up, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Paint it through. Paint through. Keep on going. This is very this is Bob Ross style miniatures painting. Just don't worry about it. Be happy. Let a little bit of white get around there. It all tells a story. It all tells something about what has happened to these poor concrete blocks in the course of their miserable existence as concrete blocks. Just while I'm sort of passing by, I'll point out, I've got a hole in the end of this one because it did have a nail in there. That kind of thing, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because these are concrete blocks. These have been through a lot. They have seen life. So it doesn't matter if they've got a few holes, nicks, if a puppy chewed them. It really, really doesn't matter. It all adds to the character of it. Okay, that's a little bit of white dry brushing just to get started. Now, you can get tied up in knots. Sorry about the arm. You can get tied up in knots at this stage about whether it's too dark, whether it's too light. You know, if you don't have white spray, you've only got grey, don't worry about it. If you've only got white and you don't have grey, don't worry about it. If you want to apply it with an airbrush instead of a spray can, again, that's absolutely fine. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter what shade of grey it is, it doesn't matter what shade of white it is. None of this is important. So the next thing we're going to try and do is add on a bit of a sort of an algal bloom effect, because this is old concrete, it's been around, it's seen a thing or two, and it's got a little bit discoloured over the years. Now, you can do this literally with any colour of green or brown or orange, anything along those lines, yellow. It really doesn't matter. And you can do a mix of different colours to show different colours of algae. You can do all kinds of stuff. So I'm sponging this on. You could stipple it on if you wanted to. You could, what else could you could use a dry brush to stipple. You could apply it sort of freehand if you were so inclined. This one's quite light. Some of my earlier attempts have been a bit darker, a bit more orange. But I picked this is Vallejo model colour ochre brown is what I'm using. I'm using it because I've never used this paint before. It's been sitting on my shelf for about 15 years. I don't think I've ever painted with it before. It's not very well mixed, which is one of the reasons it's coming out really light. So I'm going to see if I can maybe get a darker version of it out of that bottle. It still wants to be quite light. See, I want a kind of a dirty brown look to this stuff, and this should dry off quite quickly. I mean, this is one of the things about this technique and this approach to building this stuff, is it's supposed to be quick. There are all kinds of things that you can sit around waiting for stuff to dry on, but you don't want to be doing that in this kind of painting. This is very quick and dirty. This is very, get on with it, get it over with, move on to the next thing. And don't worry too much if it hasn't dried yet, because do you know what? Concrete gets wet, and when stuff gets wet, it gets smeared, and when stuff gets smeared, it looks untidy. And what you fundamentally want is for this to look really untidy. But what we're trying to add is a sense of the organic, that this is concrete, but there is life, there is algae or moss or growth or lichen or something, just to give it a sense of being lived in. And there you can see it's just taken that. Just got that ever so slight sort of greeny yellow finish to it that just makes it look a little bit more lived in than it did before. That's all I was after there. Sorry about the arm there. I keep putting my water pot over there, it gets in your way. Okay. So while we are waiting for those to dry, we're going to look at the next bit. Now, this is a bit that normally you would do before priming. But because I wanted to look at this in particular, I wanted to have the pieces primed in advance. I didn't want to take it out of place. So I've got some pieces here to add some architectural interest to our piece of concrete terrain. These are from Iliada Game Studio. Ali there does a sort of a kit. I think it's in the 15mm range. Frankly, it's totally scale neutral. You could use it on whatever. They do have little bits where they were connected to the sprue, so that's why I'm just filing those little bits flat. You don't have to. Nobody's going to pay that much attention, but going to try and make it look good. Right, I'm going to use a little bit of PVA now. This is my old bottle of PVA that I'm using up. A little bit of PVA to glue these on. As I say, normally you'd do this at the priming stage, or before the priming stage, and then you could prime over the top of them. I'm going to prime them separately. Once they're glued into place. So we've got a nice little sort of manhole cover type thing. Just going to stick that on that end there. And you do kind of want to put these on the front and top rather than on the side, because eventually you're going to want to put other blocks up on the sides there. And I'll put another one. Mark comes in. Hobby experience means different things to different people. Well, no, that is true. That is true. But I think most people leave primary school with experience of sticking one thing to another thing. And that's basically all you need to get started with this. If you've got some experience sticking one thing to another thing, you're okay. You're going to be fine. Let's put this one on the other side for a bit of asymmetry. And you want to use this stuff to get that asymmetry, by the way, because you tend to make these in sets. I tend to make these in sets of 3. You can do different ones. But if you make them looking quite symmetric like this is, you want to use the architectural detail to add some asymmetry to it, just to make it, break it up so that when you put them together in groups, it looks more natural. They sort of flow together more naturally if there's some asymmetry in the detail of the architectural detail. So there we go. So a couple of bits on that side, one bit on that side. I'm going to add one more thing because we've got time, because we're waiting for stuff to dry. So this is a lovely kit. Now I've used half of this, as you can already see, but this is another Iliada Game Studio kit, which incidentally I have in stock at Precinct Omega if you want one. So it comes with these control panels. So there are 3 designs of control panel, and as you see they come in lots. So we've got 8 of these type of control panel. We've got 4 of this with the circular screen, and then we got 12 of these little control panels. And again, they're just lovely additions to any piece of homemade terrain that you want to add some detail to just give it that kind of production look. These are a lovely addition. I'm going to use one of the large ones just so I can show you how it goes together. Get a craft knife. So again, a knife to cut it out. You want the front and the back. Now you can just use the front. If you're sticking this to a flat surface, you could just stick it straight to the scenery. And you could keep quite a flat, narrow piece. I want one that's going to stick out a bit, so you stick the back on it as well. So let's get my brush out. People can be shouting at me because I leave my brushes in the water. It just shows you what a complete amateur I am. I don't treat my brushes terribly well. I treat my really good brushes well. I don't leave my Kolinsky Sable brushes tipped down in the water, I promise. Strictly how I treat my dry brushes and tank brushes and stuff. So don't hold it against me. Right. Okay, so we've glued that on. We've got a little bit of glue on the screen. You know, if this was a display piece, I would worry about that, but it absolutely isn't. This is a tabletop piece, so I really don't care. Where am I going to put that? Let's get a character here. We've got Kurtz from the Horizon War Zero Dark Miniatures range that isn't out yet. Let's have a look at where he is. So we're going to put that, going to have that overlapping 2 of these, I think. Maybe in the middle there. Yeah, go well in the middle. Okay, I'm going to pop that in the middle. Bit of glue. Again, it's just PVA. Keep things simple. Forgive me if I keep moving out of camera line, by the way. I'm, as you've gathered, quite new to this process of sort of hobby live streams and videos, so I'm still learning my way in. Just going to glue that one down there. Lovely. Now this is mostly dry around here, which is fine. If you wanted to speed it up, if it's not drying quickly enough, get a mostly dry brush. You can just sweep any residual fluid around. It'll dry off that much quicker. And we get to move on. So next thing I should be doing is priming the pieces that I've just glued on, but they're going to take a few minutes to dry there. So what we're going to do is take a moment to start the planning phase. Now, if we look back at a couple of the pieces that I showed you at the beginning, we can see that I've done graffiti designs on there, and people have expressed amazement at my graffiti style. Some people have said, gosh, that is some professional level tagging, which is extremely sweet. I am so far from being a graffiti guy, it's just not true. And doing graffiti isn't difficult. No, that's not fair. If you are a professional tagger, it is an art, and it requires an artistic sense. If you are a model maker who is only interested in conveying a sense of an urban terrain, it is not difficult. So what you've got to think about is the space you want to fill and how you want to fill it. And in this case, we've really got sort of three spaces to think about. This is our big space that we could fill this, and obviously this applies to both sides. The fact that I've put stuff on here, by the way, doesn't matter as far as the graffiti is concerned, because who hasn't seen street architecture that has had graffiti over it? Okay, that's fine. You can graffiti over the stuff you're supposed to. So we've got this area here, and the same on the other side, but then we've got this space here, and we've got this space here, and it's a kind of triangular space because it kind of blurs down over to here and to here. Now if you make a larger piece, if you make this out of more blocks, then obviously you've got a larger and more elaborate space to work with. So if you wanted to build up, if you wanted to build a piece like this, you can make some really, really big, impressive pieces if you feel inclined. But I don't think it's necessary. And I think you saw it in the sort of the layout that I showed you at the start. This is how we're going to do things. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to do a bit of a combo. So I'm thinking about using this space here. So I'm using the pencil. So I'm just using the pencil to etch it in. And use that space there. And yeah, we're going to fill it all. Go on, let's fill it all. That's our plan. We're going to fill this whole thing with some graffiti. What am I going to do? Okay, I've got Mark Bjorkman on the chat, and he's the most recent person to have commented. I noticed that David Sondered commented earlier. David, I have replied to your mail. If I've got mail, sir, you've got money. Okay. David is the artist for Horizon Wars Infinite Dark, which is the spaceship miniatures game that I'm just about to publish. So if you're new to Precinct Omega and this is the first of our videos that you've watched, do go to Wargame Vault and look for Precinct Omega Publishing. I will stick a link in the comments on the YouTube video when it's up for public consumption. So seeing as Mark Bjorkman is in there, we're going to go with Bjork. Bjork is going to be our thing. So we're going to be thinking about a B. This isn't actually... I thought this was going to be a soft enough pencil, but it's not. Let's get a softer pencil. Yeah, that's a 2B. That'll do nicely. So we're going to do a Bjork. And this is a very considerate graffiti artist because he is currently not going over the street architecture. He is not using it. Okay, so we've got a Bjork. BJ ORK. Now we don't have to worry about it overflowing. We don't even have, and this is the important thing, we don't have to worry about it being legible. In fact, if anything, being legible is a disadvantage for graffiti. Okay. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw it in now with a permanent marker. One of my favourite hobby tools is my black Sharpie. I use it for so many different things that it's amazing. So we're not necessarily looking for legibility here. So I'm just thinking about where we're going to have, and all of this can be redone, by the way. So the fact that I'm doing it in permanent marker isn't committing me to anything at all. So we got O in there. And people say that does not look like a K. It doesn't need to because it's graffiti. Okay, so we've got our B-O-R-K, and actually, I mean, some of my favourite graffiti that I've done on my kit before, and I think I pulled one of them out earlier. No, not that one. Yeah, this one. This one here. Okay, what does that say? Any idea? No? What about that way up? Any idea? No, it doesn't matter. It absolutely doesn't matter what it actually says. It doesn't need to be legible. It just has to look like graffiti. Right, so big features of the graffiti are the black outline, the big fat letters, and the overrunning of the text. Okay, if you can get those three together, it'll look like street graffiti. And this is the other thing, the graffiti that we sort of admire out on the street is done by very, very talented people who put a lot of time, effort and skill and artistry into this stuff. But not all graffiti is by an artist. Some stuff is just a bit crap. So the fact that it's big doesn't mean it has to be good. Right, now we are going to colour this. We're going to colour this in while the other stuff dries. Okay, a quick one. So these are the paints that I'm using for this. These are Chroma Artists colours. I have no idea where to get these. I'm sure they're great. These are proper artists' acrylics, and these were given to me by my uncle, who is a professional artist. The only reason that I'm using in this project is because they're cheap. They're free. I got given them for free. They didn't cost me anything. So I can use them up and I don't care. I don't care what happens to them. It doesn't matter. Now, next one is what brush am I going to use to paint Björk? So I've got a large dry brush and a small dry brush. I've got a whole collection of smaller brushes if I was so inclined to use them. Short answer is, again, it doesn't matter. At this stage, it really, really doesn't matter. You can use a big brush, a small brush. Big brushes will take less time, be slightly less neat. Small brushes will be neater. But again, it doesn't matter if it's not neat. This is graffiti art. It's allowed to be messy. So we're just going to fill in this space here. And I think I'm going to do the eye, the dot of the eye, or the J, sorry, not an eye. The dot of the J is going to be in a different colour, so I'll leave that alone. You can see I'm not worried too much about going over the lines. I can redo the lines when I'm finished, and in any case you'll see, if you look at a lot of graffiti on the street, they do a coloured outline. So they have the black line that will show you the edge of the letters, but around that black line there is a coloured outline that has usually been sprayed after the black line that was up there first. But you know, it doesn't matter because it's graffiti. It doesn't have to be neat. This is so on the Discord. If you're a patron of Precinct Omega, and you can become a patron at patreon.com/Precinct Omega. If you wanted to become a patron, you would get invited to join our Discord. And I was chatting on the Discord with one of my patrons earlier, and he said, "Gosh, this needs artistic skill." It really, really doesn't. Now you can get it right, you can get it wrong. You could even, I mean, I've got at least one piece. I'll show you. Hold on a second. I'll get one of the earlier pieces I did that I wanted to illustrate the fact that it doesn't need to be artistic. Where's it gone? There we go. So we see the help at the top there. Yeah, that's completely legitimate, good-looking graffiti as far as the urban terrain goes. The AC down here, again, completely legit. You see this on walls all over the place. It doesn't need to be fancy. The fancy is just for fun. For fun, if you want to do that kind of thing. Okay, so we have filled in the red. And like I said, I am an impatient guy. I've used way less red than I thought I was going to, so I've got masses still down here in my palette. I say palette. I don't know if you know what this is. This used to be in my fridge. I'm supposed to put eggs in it, but we never used it. So I thought, yeah, that'll do. It's a palette. I've got two of them. So I don't have to wait for this to get dry. Okay, so you can move straight on, because remember that the street artists here are using spray cans. So they're looking to blend stuff together. And sometimes they do it well, and sometimes they do it not so well. So, it doesn't have to be perfect, or even good. And working over wet paint really helps it just be that little bit sloppier. And sloppy works here. It gives it that sense of verisimilitude is a good word, because it's sloppy. So I'm doing it like I'm highlighting. So I'm just looking to pull out the outlines of each letter in a slightly lighter shade to give it some depth. Okay, now I'm going to let that dry for a bit, and we're going to move on to another piece. because I'm going to add some posters to this. I'm going to put the posters on the other side. Posters are great. You can add as many posters as you like. There really is not a limit to posters. I got posters, where have I left my spares? I got my posters online. I just did a Google search for them, and I found a whole sheet of sort of cyberpunk, zombie apocalypse type posters, and I just cut them out as and when I need them. So I've just got a couple for this one here. We are going to stick these posters on the other side. Just stick one right there, and I'm going to put one down here. Again, asymmetry is what we're looking for. A bit more PVA. PVA on top, PVA underneath. Just glues it down nice and securely. So we get a couple of posters there. Now the nice thing, when you're doing this, if you're working in batches, so if you're working on more than one of these at a time, and I recommend it, then, so I could be doing this graffiti, and then I could put posters over the top. And then I could add some more graffiti, and then put some more posters over the top. And you can do the same thing. The posters go down, and then graffiti, and then more posters, and then more graffiti. And you get that sense of layers of people coming back generation after generation to add their own particular marks and themes to any wall that we're working with. Yeah? So that's what we're after here. So that dried a bit. That's dried a bit on this side. That's good. So I can add a bit more white, because we want a bit of a sharper contrast. Bit of a sharper contrast on that side. So let's add some more white into that pink. We go a bit nuts over here, so we're going to go up here. Yeah, that's looking good. I like it. Now, one thing that graffiti artists really do like is sharpness. They like sharp contrast. So having sort of done that bit, just going to add some pure white. Put some sharp contrast on it. But you know, if you didn't do it, it wouldn't matter, because it's graffiti. You see, it doesn't matter. There we go. I'm going to do a bit of yellow. Yep. Yellow for the dot of the J. Blob, blob, blob. It's on there. Okay? That's where we are at. Right, we're going to take a brief pause now, because I've got to do the priming on the architectural bits. The architectural details need to get primed. I'm actually going to ditch that. It's perhaps not the best one to use. I'm going to use that one there. How did that go? Oh dear, that's not good. One of my brushes got a blob of white paint on it. Must have got thrown there from somewhere. Dear. Right. Again, I'm not going to be super seriously concerned, even though you would normally do this as part of the priming of the whole piece. I'm not going nuts on this. It's just to get the woody parts primed. Not going to worry if I slip and go over the lines. Happy accidents, right, Bob? Happy accidents. That's what we're looking for here, because so many accidents have happened to this stuff. So many bad things have happened near this place and around this place and to this place. Black marks, smears, unexpected blobs of white and yellow and green, doesn't matter. None of it matters, because it all tells part of the story of this place, yeah? Cool. So I've got a bit of black there. I'm going to stick some. Just because people do this, they'll just come up and they'll just paint stuff. What do you paint? What do you fancy painting? I think nice big anarchy symbol. A nice big anarchy symbol. Anarchy or Avengers Assemble. Aha, let's get across. All the way across, otherwise it's Avengers, not Anarchy. Yeah. There we go. Nice bit of blob over there. Okay. So we're more or less finished over here. I mean, I would maybe add some more white, just to give it some sharp highlights. But I'm going to... So it's usually a lot easier when I'm not trying to show it to a camera, I have to say. There we go. Nice bit of Bjorkman. Okay. Good, right. So I've added some posters. Oh, I haven't done this guy over here. Hold on. So I've added some posters. I've added some random graffiti. We need some more graffiti on here, by the way. One piece is never enough. So one thing when you are doing graffiti, never do one piece of graffiti. Because where there is one piece of graffiti, there will always be another piece of graffiti. That's just the rule of graffiti. That is just how it is. There is always more graffiti. Oh, I should mention, by the way, if you want to see the master, the absolute master of scale graffiti, go and look at the Instagram account of a guy called Kevin Delenti. And that is his name, and that is his Instagram handle. Kevin, K-E-V-I-N, Delenti, D-A-L-E-N-T-I, I think that's right, Kevin Delenti. And he does scale models mostly inspired by New York, and a lot of it is sort of 70s, 80s New York when it was absolutely the hub of urban graffiti, and not in a good way. So we're going to add some more stuff to this. Okay, so we've got a face on there, so inevitably that is going to get a beard and some eyes. Let's have that. Let's have a pentagram. There's always a pentagram. What else could we have? Any suggestions? Any suggestions? Do something over here. Gonna have Pac-Man down the bottom there. And oh, tagging. Okay, so tagging's a big thing. Tagging is basically criminal nonsense compared to actual graffiti, which at least is an artistic discipline, even if it is technically illegal. But tagging happens everywhere that there's graffiti. The people who tag, as a hobby, work hard on developing their tags, but you are not a tagger, you are a miniature maker. So what you're trying to do is replicate the impression of a tag. So a tag is really just a series of angles and curves that sit together, and you can mix them up. So we can start with something like that, looks a bit like an N, then we're going to put a line through it, and then a squiggle there, and there we've got a tag. So we're not trying to be a thing. So let's do going to do that. There we go, and we got another tag. Okay, so we are literally just thinking of signs like that. Okay, so we got some tagging going on. CDC. I have no idea what Ben means by CDC, but I'm going to put CDC in here anyway, because why not? I'll put an arrow on it as well. There we go. That's another thing. You see a lot of arrows. Get a lot of arrows in graffiti, and you can really go nuts. You can do whatever you please. Okay, we're going to do the same thing over the other side a bit. What else can we do? Any more suggestions? We've got 5 people on. We've got to have some good suggestions. I'm going to start using your names if you don't. We've got David is Studio Chorophobia, which is all about clowns. So let's do a clown face. Got a clown face up the top there. It's usually in our hand. And he's going to have a great big fat blunt. There we go, because that's what it's all about. You know, it doesn't have to be elegant or cool. Also, those FEMA symbols are designed. Well, yeah, you can download this kind of thing and print off your posters. I've got sort of warnings for zombies and contamination and quarantine areas and all kinds of stuff. I have done a Kilroy somewhere else. There's a Kilroy at the top. So that'll do. That'll do. To be honest, you can. There is no limit. Okay, you can keep on going. You can add more posters. I'd put more posters on here. I'd add more graffiti over the top of the posters, and then more posters to finish it off. You cannot really do too much. I mean, go and look at Kevin Delenti's stuff. You know, he uses source material from, New York, Brooklyn, and the underground in New York throughout the 70s and 80s, and there is just endless stuff and layers and layers. I mean, it's stratas of the stuff, so you can't go too far wrong. Right, now there were a couple of things. Okay, I've not done anything with these architectural details today, and normally I would. Let me see if I can find some that I've done before that I can show you. 2 secs. Typical, isn't it, when you pick the ones you picked up and they don't have good examples on. Okay, here we go. So, there's an example of one that I've done with a screen. Again, so, I've stippled the outside with grey to make it look sort of battered and broken. You don't have to if you want to emphasise that it's new, it's a new addition to this old thing. You can just put a new one on there and make it look new and shiny, and then it stands in strong contrast. But you can also, of course, graffiti right over the top of it. And I'm sure I've got some examples where I've done that. Somewhere in there, but I'm not going to waste time now. But fundamentally, that's not what people are here for. What people are really here for is how do you then make it look really weathered? And let me show you the secret. Everybody's favourite paint. It is Citadel Agrax Earthshade. And you're going to say, well, how does that go? I'm not going to wash the whole thing, Roby. Surely I can't just wash the whole piece. Well, you sort of do. You sort of do, but it's how you go about it. So what we're trying to do now is convey the idea that this stuff has been left out in the rain for a long time. Okay, so this is weathered stuff. This is stuff that has seen some crap down the years. And so we're going to start by, and I'm using a big dry brush here, so we're going to start by just drawing it across the top there. So you can see I've got a layer, and I've got to move fairly quickly at this point because it starts to dry pretty much straight away. And now I'm going to use those places where I've already carved some weak points in, and I'm going to pull it down. And then as I go, it will already start to dry as I go. So I just keep on pulling it down until I get to the bottom, and all of these streaks. Then we got some stuff left over on the top. You pull that back across the top, and that's that. So we're going to do the whole thing along the top and along the top. And don't worry if you don't think you've got enough on there. There, as with so many things, it doesn't matter. There are no rules. Okay, so we're going to pull it on down. As it goes, whatever seems right, whatever seems to work, keep on pulling it down and then pull it across. Okay, and the same on the other side. Occurs to me I'm usually wearing gloves for this stuff, and I'm not doing that today. Just silly. Okay, and then we do the same thing over here. Along the top, a little bit more, along the sides, as already starting to drip down. Perfect. That's what we want. Okay. It just comes right down. And if it smears, if you've maybe not let this dry completely, don't worry about it, because that's what happens. You know, the graffiti artists out there, the rain starts, it's a heavy rain, and you know, it smears. That happens. That happens. It's part of the story. It's part of the narrative of what's been going on for this wall. Yeah? Now, okay, that's half of it. That's half of it. Because you don't stop there. This is the important bit. This is what I've learned recently, is it looks so much better. So once you finish that bit, you turn it over, and you do the same thing on the top, and you work your way back down the way you've come. Because the bit that I did before has already started to dry. So as it dries, we pull this down back over the bits that's already been done, and it just sort of doubles up the effect. And pull that across. And then we're going to do the other side as well. Now, it's almost a truism in our hobby that if you look at somebody and go, oh wow, how did you do that? The answer is almost always seems to be Agrax Earthshade, or Devil and Mud if you're of the right period. And that's it. Okay, so at this stage, I've still got to do the architectural details. You could easily, and I almost certainly will, I'm going to add some more posters. I'll add some more posters over here as well. And once I've added the posters, I can then do that weathering again if I want to, maybe just over the posters, or I could do it all over again, and it absolutely doesn't matter. That is the extent of it. And you may, you know, somebody could come along and look at this one and go, oh, hey, look, he's not finished that off. It's not been finished. Even if you accidentally move on and you do this stage and you haven't finished the graffiti, do you know what, graffiti artists sometimes don't finish the work either. Have you done a show on using powders, asks Dean. Well, I've had this set for about 20 years, and I've only used that much of it. So I don't use powders, is the short answer. That's not to say they're not cool. They are very cool. I love what people do with them, and I would certainly consider buying powders. I've just never got around to it, and it is as simple as that. So before I finish up, I'm going to put I'll put that to one side for a minute, and we're going to look at some of the others in detail, just so that you can see in detail some examples from previously. So you probably can't tell, but that says "You what, mate?" Okay, and there we go, got a fairly blank side on that one, so I've got room to add some more stuff if I wanted to. This was one of the first ones that I did the other day. Again, that doesn't say anything. It is specifically intended that you could do that. Although that said, I did it, and then I did it to be able to turn it upside down, and then I realised that I'd done this paint splash effect, and I'd done the running of the paint, so it only really looks right that way up. But it is supposed to be invertible, and you can do it that way. Again, not much to speak of on the other side. I like this one. This is one of my favourites. Did the rainbow effect. So if you do want to put more time in, you know, you can blend the paints down, and you can get this kind of effect. Of course, you can also do a lot of this with an airbrush, and if you're really good at using an airbrush, you can get some amazing effects, really replicating the look of a spray can in the street. But you know, the point is, you don't got it. You don't got it. All this is done with brushes. That, I'm told, is a stamp from Japan. I hosted a Japanese student, and he brought us this sort of sheet of things, and it wasn't explained what they were, so I kept them. Thought they'd make good posters, and somebody said, "Oh, is that a stamp?" And obviously, Angry Marines has gone on there. I've done a, I don't know if you can see, I've done a little face appearing on the screen on the picture there. And this piece over here, this is an unfinished, consciously unfinished piece of graffiti. It's a Pac-Man ghost. He's still waiting for his eyes, which I might get around to at some point. I'll show you one more. Oh yeah, so this is an example. This is the one that went over. It's gone over the street. Furniture. It says chip, and it turned out to be brown. I wasn't actually intending it to be brown. It's supposed to be red, but I got impatient and I started painting the red over the black that was underneath it, because I painted this one in black first and then painted the red on top of it, and it wasn't quite dry, so it all went brown, which is fine because that kind of fits. It's chocolate chip. See? Happy accidents. I don't care. And this is a good one. I'll look at this side. This is important for anybody who's not watched my videos before, because that is a 0 and that says dark. Horizon War Zero Dark is a miniatures game that I published last year. It is a sci-fi skirmish miniatures game that this stuff has basically been designed to use in. I'm working on a supplement for that game called Zero Dark Fear, which moves the game into interior and gridded tabletop spaces, and I'll be using these pieces to build the walls in the corridors. So something else I was going to show you before we get to the end. So that's going to be sort of the corridor walls for the photography, or part of the photography of the game. So you can start combining these in interesting ways. So, and you can lay them flat like that. You could make them into steps like that. You can get one of these, go there. Oops, you can't quite see that properly. There you go. For more steps, so we get some guys up on the steps. So this is very much the idea. So these, you know, to provide some level of access to the miniatures to climb up on top of the walls. You can add street furniture and ladders and stuff. Ali actually does a set of ladders as part of his kit. All kinds of combos you can put together if you are so inclined, depending on what you want to do and how you want it to look. So this automatically gives some, you know, you've got points for cover if you're playing Infinity or Zero Dark. You could easily stick doors on the outside if you wanted this to be an accessible space. So, boop, door, and now he's inside. Let me turn that around so you can see that a bit clearer. This is one of the Star Saga doors. So there's a single door. If you want to see one of the painted, I was rather pleased with this door I did the other day. The double door on it. Now we've got a room. I even put, I think this works. Yep. I was falling in. Let's do it the other way around. Might work that way. There you go. It's even got a roof. Look at that. Put it there and there'll be less chance of it falling over. There. So all the stuff that we can do with this stuff, and the best thing is it packs down so small. It's cheap as chips. You can often find Jenga sets in your local charity shop or thrift store if you're in the US. As I say, you can see that one which we've just done today is noticeably bigger than the others. It doesn't matter. They'll all find a way to mix up together if you want to. So they will pack into a really, really small space, and you can do all sorts of creative combinations. And of course, as I say, I showed you at the beginning this other terrain. You can use the same techniques I just showed you on much bigger pieces of terrain if you're so inclined. This is one that appears in the Horizon War Zero Dark rulebook, as it happens. Yeah. Look at that. So you can combine these together. So put a nice piece of light terrain there. Now it's got steps up the side. Now it's got a side garden. Oops. A contained side garden with a door. Let's put a building on the top as well. This is our new piece here we're using. There we go. 1, 2, 3. And for the roof. And another door. At the top. There we go. Look at that. And we've even got a piece we haven't used yet. Stick that on the side there. Additional access. Phew! Okay, well it's 6 minutes to 3. If you've enjoyed this video, if the first time you've watched a Zero Dark video, be this on the Facebook live stream or on YouTube, I am posting new videos every week. I make no promise as to the content. They're not always hobby. I think it's probably going to be hobby every other week. Let me, for those of you who've not met me before, here I am. Hello. Nice to see you. Do you like my new blinds, by the way? I just had them fitted. You probably can't see me very well because all the lighting is wrong. So there we go. There, now you can see me. Okay. So welcome to the Precinct Omega Studio. Thank you for coming. Any questions anybody wants to throw into the comments on the Facebook live stream? Now is the time, and we're going to be wrapping up in like 2 minutes' time. But yeah, it'll probably be hobby content every other week, and then the weeks in between those will be more sort of discursive, and it will usually be talking about games development at Precinct Omega. Speaking of which, I've talked about Horizon War Zero Dark. That is already out, already available, along with the Zero Dark Operation Nemesis supplement. Horizon War Zero Dark is a sci-fi skirmish game which you can play solo, co-op, or versus. And there are missions for all those play modes in both the rulebook and Operation Nemesis, which is like a campaign book. Adds some new rules. You can get a tester version of the game if you just want to try it out. It's called a Zero Dark Training Run, and you can find that at wargamesvault.com. But in like 2 weeks' time, what date is it? 3 weeks' time, 28th of May. I will be dropping a brand new game. Horizon Wars Infinite Dark is a spaceship game. So it's built on the same core mechanics as Zero Dark and Horizon Wars, the game that came before it, which was published by Osprey. And in Horizon Wars Infinite Dark is a spaceship combat game. You can use any of your existing spaceship miniatures to put fleets together. And again, it can be played solo, co-op, or versus. Whole bunch of missions in the book. Fantastic looking book. We've had David Sondered on the live stream today, who is the artist at Studio Colorophobia, who has done my cover art, and it should be hopefully waiting for me as I come off this live stream. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. Probably next week I will show you guys what it looks like. All right, that's everything from me. No questions in the live stream, so thanks very much. If there's a question that occurred to you later, or if you're watching the YouTube video and you've got questions, stick them in the comments. As they always say, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, you can click the little bell button. I think it's up there, that will alert you when I am live. I'm live at the same time every week. It's always 2 till 3 on Facebook on Precinct Omega. Thank you very much. Bye.